With times as tough as they are, we present our formula for the cheapest kind of amusement, nightmares. First, you eat a real lobster, not the kind they send to Congress. Then you add milk and mix in a horror story. We've all heard of the worm that turned, but this is the bookworm that turned, inside out. Of course, if you can work up a chill, it helps. And a little ptomaine poisoning will get your mind off your other troubles. And when you get that delicious feeling which is a cross between delirium tremens and the 7-year itch, you know that something will come up any minute. Oh, oh, oh. A good nightmare always begins in a dark cellar with a coffin. The caretaker comes down to see that all the ghosts are locked up for the night. He'd better keep away from the casket or he'll be coughing. Grrr! But he doesn't care. You can see how brave he is. So he decides to ask the guy his name and how he feels. Why, it's Dracula, the guy who invented necking. The caretaker decides to run out and have a good fit. He's afraid that Dracula may want a blood transfusion any minute. But when he tries to go away, he meets himself coming back. It looks as though he's having his ups and downs. He acts like Congress and always ends up where he started. This exercise is good for water on the knee, water on the brain, and other naval diseases. It is also a good way of enjoying the jitters without drinking alcohol. The poor fellow is afraid to go to bed, so he sleeps in a hammock. Dracula wants to start his stuff. He thinks he's clever, but we can see right through him. So the caretaker comes downstairs with a hatchet. I don't know how he got upstairs, but anything can happen in a nightmare. Dracula was a big cheese, so he always had mice around him. So he hits Dracula in the coffin. Oh! Oh! As usual, Dracula rises to the occasion. Grrr! Get out of here! Now he's got Dracula sore, and the caretaker hasn't a ghost of a show. The caretaker decides that he might have been seeing things. Maybe his near beer was nearer than he thought. No, sir, he was right. A guy with a face like Dracula must be a spook, or he'd have his face lifted. And the worst of it is, this spook looks screwy, and there's nothing screwier than a screwy spook. He decides to retire. If I were in his place, I'd resign, or at least quit. As the door blows open, he gets the delicious aroma of fresh ghost. He gets a sudden attack of the pivot disease. It's like the hiccups. The more you do it, the more you have to. And when you think you're over it, you're just beginning. The only way to stop is to do it faster and tire yourself out. If you saw a sight like this in your bedroom, maybe you'd have a jitter or two. He's got it again. This is what's known as being several sheets in the wind. It looks as though it's becoming a habit. Pretty soon he'll wear out the sheet, and then he'll have to start on the mattress. Then he'll get down to the rugs, and they'll need new furniture. So Dracula comes up close and shows us what the well-dressed ghost is wearing. He throws its silhouette on the wall, and the wall is so scared it looks as if it's plastered. Ooh. And now the blood may spurt any minute. Gush, gush. Ooh. There is the profile that has won first prize in all the ghost beauty contests. When Dracula was born, his mother took one look at that face and had herself arrested. So he decides to go back to his coffin and sleep for 100 years until Congress decides to do something about the Depression. Well, well, what a nightmare. Think of having Dracula and the monster from Frankenstein in the same dream. He's asleep, but maybe if we talk in his own language, we can wake him. Ah! You see, it's very simple, if you know how to handle your monsters. This looks dangerous. Hey, doctor, look out. He's awake. Well, it's too late. It looks as if the doctor is going to need a doctor. No, we were wrong. The doctor's going to need an undertaker. So the monster starts out to look for trouble. There's so much trouble around these days, he shouldn't have any trouble finding it. He can't decide which way to go. He's like a woman automobile driver. Well, here comes Dracula. When he and the monster get together, things should happen. What do you think of that? He's afraid of Dracula, which proves that a monster can dish it out, but he can't take it. Who's this? Why, it's Helen Twelvetrees. Maybe the nightmare is going to become a pleasant dream. No, we're wrong. The monster is still around looking for trouble. The man is telling Helen she has no business being in the same nightmare with Dracula. But Dracula is nearby, and the gentleman's finish starts to begin to commence. Meantime, the monster is looking on and studying Dracula's technique. Helen is beside herself, and now something else is beside her. Grrr! There's nothing for Helen to do but faint and wait for the nightmare to be over. Dracula's income tax was due, and he had to get some money. When night came, Helen had decided to call it a day. But she forgot to take her jewels off, and they looked like ready money to Dracula. He has to be careful because Helen is very ticklish around the neck. In fact, it's a very ticklish situation. And of course, the monster is taking it all in. But suddenly Dracula throws caution to the winds and his fingers to the windpipe. Finally, the deed is did, and Helen awakes in her sleep. When Helen tells the young man she saw a ghost, he says he'd like to see one too. Well, it's too bad. It looks as if his goose is cooked or his cook is hashed. So Dracula gets him, and we hear the vampire eating his supper behind the wall. It's becoming tough. Every time Helen talks to a man, Dracula gets him. At this rate, she could never get married because she'd be a widow every 15 minutes. It looks as though Dracula has finished his entree and is coming back for the dessert. The monster is still around, and he's getting a lot of bad ideas. There comes Dracula in disguise, but we'd know him anywhere. You can always recognize him by the fourth toe on his left foot. The monster thinks chasing women is a lot of fun. In fact, he decides to try it himself. And here is little May Clark. She's going to be married, and as you see, she's jumping with joy. In the background is the monster ready to try out Dracula's technique. If May had eyes in the back of her head, she'd faint. Hey, May, psst, psst. It's psst, psst, too bad. We tried to warn you, May. Boo. Ah. Boo. Ah. Boo. Ah. Boo. Ah. So she starts to run with a monster behind. They start to play follow the leader. Then it becomes ring around the rosy. May is so scared she's running around in circles. If her fiancé sees her, he'll think she's nutty. She finally tells the monster she can't play anymore because she's got to be married. The poor monster is broken-hearted because nobody's afraid of him. He has to sit down all day because when he stands up, his feet touch the floor. But finally he sees what he wants and decides to go after it. What can it be? Maybe it's Dracula. Whatever it is, he wants it. Why, it's our lobster and milk friend, and look where he is. He better look out or the monster will get him. It's a good thing he's waking up, or he might fall and break his chandelier. And the moral of this story is, you can milk a cow, but a lobster is very ticklish.